Hello and welcome back. I am very excited once again to be talking through what we are going to be going through. So I've been wanting to do this series for a while, and it's just going through the book of Proverbs for 31 days. I don't know how long that's going to take me, but we're going to do it. And just going through the wisdom that this book has, something that I've made a habit for the past decade of my life since I was 12, 13 years old, was reading a proverb a day every morning. And there is so much that I've learned in the last 10 years of doing this, beyond just the abundance of wisdom that this book has. There's also something I notice every time I read a chapter once again for like the billionth time. I'm always finding something new. And I know you probably hear that a lot from like pastors and leadership in the church of like saying you're always going to find something new in the Bible. And it's true. Like every time I read Proverbs, there is something new that applies to my life because life is ever changing. Life doesn't just stay consistent throughout your entire life. There's not a whole lot of consistency in life. Life changes. And so as your life changes, you're able to read Proverbs with a new perspective and read it with this new perception of, oh, this part of my life changed, so now this part of Proverbs can apply to my life. So I'm hoping that's what we can do as we go through this series. So truly what we're going to do is my Bible and specifically the book of Proverbs, there's notes beyond belief. I'm constantly writing about the new things that are happening in my life and how it applies to Proverbs. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be just reading a chapter and going through some of the things that I've written down, but also just some things that the Lord has pointed out to me as we read. And so that's the goal. We're just going to read and we're going to talk through Proverbs, and I really pray and hope that it blesses you because this book has specifically blessed me, and I will continue to make this a practice throughout the rest of the decades of my life as well. And so we will begin with Proverbs 1. And this Proverbs first is about fear and what fear looks like in your life and what fear of the Lord looks like in your life, and then also what your fears, how your fears relate to the book and how your fears relate to the things that are talked about in Proverbs, but also how your fears relate to the goodness of God. So let me... So Proverbs 1. These are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son, king of Israel. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline, to help them understand the insights of the wise. Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives, to help them do what is right, just, and fair. These proverbs will give insight to the simple, knowledge and discernment to the young. Let the wise listen to these proverbs and become even wiser. Let those with understanding receive guidance by exploring the meaning in these proverbs and parables, the words of the wise and their riddles. Fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. So what does the fear of the Lord look like? And what does fear look like in your life? A lot of us, when we first hear the word fear, we think about an experience. And so what was your first fearful experience? Or we think about what your greatest fear is. And so I want you to, before we get into the meat of this chapter, think about what your greatest fear is, and not like a physical spider, bear type of fear, but a spiritual or a mental or emotional fear that you have. And so specifically for me, I wrote down in the first part of Proverbs my number one fear so that I can recount how that fear has changed as I delve into the wisdom of Proverbs. And so I wrote my number one fear is that I would be unusable to God and undesirable for him to use me in ways for others. And so in this fear, it affects my insecurity. It affects the way that I perform around others, or it affects the way that I speak or the way that I go about thinking. And so this specific fear can affect every single area of my life. In Proverbs, what it does is it changes that fear, for me at least, and I want you to think about your fear, but for me, it changes that fear of man, it changes that fear of being unusable and undesirable into this fear of the Lord. And I'm not talking about this fear of, a God who's going to consistently harm you or discipline you. I'm talking about a fear and this respect over a God of the entire universe who pursues you and never stops pursuing you. And so something to consider is changing your perspective of having a greater fear of the Lord than a fear over blank, whatever that fear is for you. What is that going to look like for you to change your fear from this emotional, spiritual, mental fear to a fear of the Lord? And it says the fear of the Lord is the foundation. It's the foundation of true knowledge. And we'll learn a lot about fools in this book, but fools despise wisdom and discipline, and so they're not even considering it in their plan. And so it goes on to say, my child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck. My child, if sinners entice you, turn your back to them. They may say, come with us, let us hide and kill just for fun. Let's ambush the innocent. Let's swallow them alive like the grave. Let's swallow them whole like those who go down to the pit of death. Think of the great things we'll get. We'll fill our houses with all the stuff we'll take. Come throw in your loot with us. We'll share the loot with you. What this is saying here is that a lot of times fools, when they want you to join them in sin, they're not just asking, they use deceit to manipulate you. The world uses deceit to manipulate you into thinking that if you fall into the deceit that you don't know is deceit yet, you will gain something for yourself. And so here with this, listen to your father and mother as they correct you, but also if sinners entice you, if they're asking you to do something, don't go with them, because here's what they're going to say. They're going to say, hey, come with us. We're going to kill and destroy. And that sounds insane, but that's what the world is asking you to do. It's asking you to kill and destroy, whether that's in a spiritual sense or in a physical sense. And so when they ask you to do those things, they're not just saying, hey, come with us. We're going to kill and destroy. Like, come with us, come join us. They're also saying, think of the great things we'll get. We'll fill our houses with all the stuff we'll take. So it's not just a, hey, come with us to do the sin. It's, hey, come with us, but also you're going to get this in return. It's this idea that you are coming into this because you're a valuable member of their team, and they want to give you something for the actions that you'll take for their team. And so fools, although they're not wise, they're manipulative. And there's a big difference, and we'll talk about that. It goes on to say, my child, don't go along with them. Stay far away from their paths. They rush to commit evil. They hurry to commit murder. If a bird sees a trap being set, it knows to stay away. But these people set an ambush for themselves. They're trying to get themselves killed. Such is the fate of all who are greedy of money. It robs them of life. And then that section of the proverb ends, not the chapter, just the section. It ends with this idea, such is the fate of all who are greedy of money. It robs them of life. It never talked about money in the beginning. It talked about money as a prize, but it never talked about money in any other way. And then all of a sudden it says, such is the fate of those who are greedy with money. It's a good reminder about how money can entrap us, even with the poor, because money can be an idol whether you have it or you don't. Money can be an idol in the lack or in the gain. And so it's important to remember that in these moments of weakness, don't let this greed for money or greed for anything else other than the Spirit rob you from the life that you can have in wisdom. It goes on to say, and I love this personification of wisdom that Proverbs does. It makes wisdom this woman who calls to you and wants you to come to her. And it says, wisdom shouts in the street. She cries out in the public square. She calls to the crowds along the main street. So she shouts and she cries in the public square. She's right there where everyone can hear her. She calls to the crowds along the main street. She's in the middle of where everyone is. To those gathered in the front of the city gate, again, where everyone is. How long, you simpletons, will you insist on being simple-minded? How long will you mockers relish your mocking? How long will you fools hate knowledge? Come and listen to my counsel. I'll share my heart with you and make you wise. I called you so often, but you wouldn't come. I reached out to you, but you paid no attention. And so this persistence, this pursuit that wisdom has over us. You ignored my advice and rejected the correction I offered. So I will laugh when you're in trouble. I will mock you when disaster overtakes you, when calamity overtakes you like a storm, when disaster engulfs you like a cyclone, and anguish and distress overwhelm you. When they cry for help, I will not answer. Though they anxiously search for me, they will not find me. For they hated knowledge and chose not to fear the Lord. They rejected my advice and paid no attention when I corrected them. This idea of wisdom calling in the streets in the public sphere. We have the opportunity to hear wisdom on the daily, especially nowadays. We have to be discerning, of course, which we will talk about in other chapters of Proverbs. But we have so much access to wisdom. Wisdom is calling to us in the main street, in the front of the city gate, and in the public sphere, and yet we don't listen. We have unlimited access to wisdom just through the Bible, let alone all the other resources that we have in the world. We have unlimited access to wisdom, and she's calling to us in the main street, and yet we don't listen. And she anxiously searches for us, and she pursues us in what we do. And yet we choose not to listen. We choose to ignore and go with the people that are offering us this greed of wealth and this greed of idolatry. Wisdom is calling to us and offers us this abundant life, and yet we're choosing things that offer death. And that's all it offers. There's no other option with this greed for money and this robbing of life. Because if you're robbed of life, all you have is death. With wisdom, you have the option to choose life, and we're not choosing it. She's calling us in the public sphere, and we're not choosing her still. She goes on to say, therefore, they must eat the bitter fruit of living their own way. Because living your own way is bitter. It may not feel bitter in the moment, but in the end, death is bitter. Choking on their own schemes. For simpletons run away from me to death. Again, robs you of life, only option you have is death. Fools are destroyed by their own complacency. Proverbs talks a lot about laziness and complacency and feeling this this idle comfort in who you are and what you're doing. And that's what this group of people who wants to kill and destroy and steal, and whatever that looks like in your life, this group of people, whether that's actual people or just the enemy, they want you to draw into their crowd so that you can be complacent, so that you can be comfortable in your sin in order to say no to wisdom. Because then saying no to wisdom is, well, I'm comfortable. I don't need wisdom. Wisdom is getting me outside of my comfort zone. Wisdom is getting me outside of my house to the public sphere where she's preaching. You can hear her from your house, but if you don't choose to walk out to her, you're sitting in your house of death for a long time. It's hard to step out of that house of death. I'm not saying this is easy. It is not easy to walk out of a bed full of comfort that the world offers. It's not easy. But golly, if you go outside of your house to the public sphere where wisdom is calling for you, you're going to be pursued, you're going to be loved and embraced, and we'll talk about that more again as we go through Proverbs. This chapter ends with, but all who listen to me will live in peace, untroubled by the fear of harm. And I made a little note, and I said, this is everything to me, because it truly is. All who listen to me will live in peace. I don't think we know truly what consistently living in peace looks like until we meet the face of God. Untroubled by the fear of harm. I have always struggled with worry, always struggled with fear. That's been a huge, just anchor. Well, yeah, it's been something that has held me away from truly embracing grace and love. And fear has held me back a lot. And so being untroubled by the fear of harm sounds incredible. That's something that I want to pursue. That's something that I want to go and do with wisdom. All who listen to me will live in peace and be untroubled by the fear of harm. That's the kind of life we want to live. And that's the kind of life that you can live if you go after wisdom, get out of your complacency, get out of your comfort zone, leave the group that wants to kill and destroy, and go after wisdom in whatever wisdom is pursuing you in. Go to the public sphere. Get outside of your comfort zone. Fear the Lord. It's scary, but it's worth it because the fear of the Lord is more wellness driven and more holistic and feeds your body more than any other earthly thing that is holding you back from that kind of love. And so that's the end of chapter 1, and I'm very excited to be getting into some of these longer chapters, but I want to reiterate the fact that wisdom is pursuing you, and it's pursuing you in all these areas of life. And we have to be observant to know to say yes. We have to allow ourselves to be pursued. And we also have to get into the Word. Like, the Word it's God communicating with us. I think many times we just kind of do devotions and don't realize that the Lord is speaking to us through the Word. This is what we should be pursued by, not the world. Don't let the world pursue you anymore. Don't even give it the option. Be observant of how wisdom is pursuing you and follow that. And so let me just pray for us really quick and we will close out. Heavenly Father, we just pray and thank you for who you are, who you always have been, and who you always will be. I thank you so much for that your wisdom pursues us. Thank you for making us feel loved in that and know that we're loved in that. Thank you for allowing us to have faith in that, Lord. I pray that as we go through Proverbs, we would learn more about what the fearing you looks like, but also what wisdom looks like too. And we thank you and praise you in your name. Amen.